Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. Today we're going to be discussing one of my favorite subjects, and I think I'd probably say that every week, but it really is one of my favorite subjects. I love playing with ideas, and I really do think that in the end, that's where a majority of art lands. That's where it goes. Our goal here is not as artists to copy, even though there are many schools of thought that want to train you into thinking that. My goal today is to try to prove to you that's not really the typical end result of where art goes. And I think most artists are not cut out for that either, quite honestly. I don't think we're all put here to be manufacturing copies. That's why we have printers. So we want to try to stay away from that. We're going to try to help you not become a printer. Maybe that should have been the title of today's talk, right? So before we get into all of it today, we have a lot of great ideas for you. Let's say hello to our other instructors. How's it going, Swenley?
Yeah, great. And now that you were mentioning this, I would say this is one of the most valuable things I learned from you as a creative, as a designer, because as a concept artist, that's exactly what I'm paid to do, to look at reference and generate ideas, and it's good practice to practice that even with figure drawing, then it becomes habitual, and it's easier than when you have to do the job.
Yeah, I was just thinking the job title is not copy artist, it's concept artist.
Exactly.
Yeah, imagine that, copy artist. There's lots of, and that job exists, okay, just to be clear. I mean, there's tons of people who, families who want, let's say, a sketch or a painting or a family portrait done, and you can go do that, and you can be a really good copy artist. And as soon as I say that, I think I actually know people personally that do that and do really well in that space, and they go beyond copying. I think also the best of portrait artists out there are those that have some kind of idea behind the portrait, right? It's not just Xeroxing. I've taught for obviously many years now, and certain countries actually lean themselves towards the pride of copying. And then I have to teach those students out of that space because they want to get, let's say, into the entertainment industry, right? So they're trained not to think. They're trained to be a machine. And we don't want to be machines. And if you want to be a machine, then you're in the wrong place today, because I'm really here to try to break that machine mold and have you understand that there's way more to art than being a copy machine. Okay. How are you doing, Mrityunjay?
I'm doing good. As you can see, I'm ready with tools to play. So
good. All right, let's see. How's it going over here in our audience? Hello, everybody. Good day. Hello. Good afternoon. Aloha. God darn it, Don. Out there in Hawaii on some beach somewhere having a drink. Roger, love the line of action as it does work. If you make it work on the page for the right space and right reasons. All right, so let's see. I'm excited about today. Yes, me too. So let's get to it, right? Let's get over to Photoshop. I have a lot of ideas I want to discuss with you guys. So these drawings, these are both mine. They're in the character design book. There is a book on Force that's entitled Character Design from Life or Figure Drawing. So it's very different, right? Very different from the character design books that are out there, because it's saying, hey, life drawing doesn't have to be about copying the model, right? It's more than that. It's conceptual. And I think it's one of the reasons why I've been okay, mentally okay, to keep drawing and teaching the figure, because to me, it'll never be a never-ending space of creativity. It's not only going to be me teaching students how to copy, right? It's much more than that. And that's what keeps me intrigued, right? So the drawing on the left, did the model look exactly like that? No, this model's name, in fact, was Scott, an amazing model down in Los Angeles when I was there. I did this when I had my my school. But he had a huge upper body, right? And his upper body was way more developed than his legs, which most guys do. Like most people in bodybuilding are not into doing their legs. So you end up with huge muscular upper body and thinner legs, which he had. And I just decided I was going to push that. I loved the sort of top heaviness of him, right? So I pushed that idea. And you can see in here also these big couple of first strokes with the side of the pencil, or me just, swatching down big movements of force across and down the back, right? And then trying to get that gesture in his hands and his arms, right? With his skinny legs counterbalancing his huge upper body weight, and then his little bald head over in the background, right? Those are all exciting. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. This is really cool. I want to try to get this. I want to get this. It's a challenge. The challenge is to be able to look at something and not get enraptured by, I just have to copy it like a robot, right? Like it's so easy to fall into that, to have this obligation, right, to fall into being in a machine, right? And you want to crack open that mold, right? Break that mold of just falling into copying. So the next one on the top right, I actually drew it at MTV when I was teaching in New York. And I had, I think these were Caran d'Ache crayons. And I was teaching composition, and I was saying, look, when we do figure drawing doesn't even have to just be the figure. Like we can start using rectangles and boxes to compose areas of the model, right? So here I composed an illustration based off of a certain area of the model with his face to the side. And it almost has like an Art Deco-y feel to it. I like the space that this got into. And you can see I purposely picked the green because I had all these like ivories and oranges and yellows in the skin that I was using. So I made up the background. I just picked the green to kind of counterbalance that and have it pop because it's a contrasted color, right? And I got that long thin band of black along the bottom, which also kind of matches his eyebrows and the line, the color of the line. But this is all like ideas. It's idea driven, right? I'm shaping him. You can see he's very shaped out and designed, right? So just having fun with all that. All of it is me coming up with ideas based off the truth. You can see the chiseledness of the cheekbone, the shape under the eye for the highlight. It's coming from truth, but I'm kind of abstracting to some degree and taking over that truth, right? Which kind of leads me to my first slide, which is this idea of reference and what is it and why is it? We talked a little bit about this in the past. I looked up the definition, and ironically, many times, we have a preconceived notion of what the definition is, but it's not what we think it is. And reference says it's a source of information to ascertain or consider, which I got to tell you, I found really, really interesting, right? It's like, I don't have to like copy the reference. My goal is not to look up a word in the dictionary, for instance, and rewrite that term. It's like, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to use it? If I'm a writer, how am I creatively going to use this word and its definition in terms of what my concept is, right? And we're doing the same thing with visual reference. It's a source of information, but what am I going to do with it? Swanley brought up the word consult when we were talking about this during the week. I thought that was kind of interesting, right? I'm consulting, right? I'm not having to copy. I'm not a little soldier in the world of copyism. I'm going to consult this, and then I decide how far do I want to go into it being accurate to the specificity of the reference, or how much am I going to detach from it? What am I going to do with it? What does it make me feel? What kind of ideas does it spark in me, right? That's what we want. If I was you right now in the audience, I'd be thinking, yeah, but when I look at the model, it doesn't spark anything, right? Like I just want to copy. Well, that's what we're here to try and help you with today, right? It's like, how do I come up with these ideas? What kind of ideas are you even talking about, right? So I wrote this little note at the bottom. The idea is not to duplicate, right? The person is already the person. So I'm not looking to duplicate them. If I want to do that, I could press the picture on my iPhone, right? And turn it black and white. I could put filters on it, right? That's not what we're talking about, okay? Okay, let's just see how the chat's going real quick here. Ready to use the force. Drawing a Scott is awesome. Thank you, Don. Great way to put it. The force line is a ride if you'd like to keep the loose gooiness of it. Yeah. So even there, force in itself is also a concept, right? It's an idea. And I love that Roger said the loose line, the gooiness of it. Gooiness to me is experiential, meaning it's experience driven. You're having a thought, right? An experience that you're going through while you're drawing. If you wish to join Teamwork for Drawing, collaborate, Pablo. If I'm experiencing that challenge after a couple of years, I'm trying to get the hang of force and anatomy. It's hard to start being more creative. Yes, that's right. Yeah, Pablo's exactly at that place with me right now. Pablo's a premium member, and been kicking butt over the last couple of years, and we're at the final stretch. And this is it, basically. It's like we're past studying and observing, right? Now we're like, how do we get more opinionated into this? Did you draw them directly or study a reference? The ones that I just showed you were direct. I'm basically looking at the model and going, that's amazing, right? Boom, 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 boom. You don't have to do that. And we're going to talk about that today as well. You could jot down notes. You can sketch out thumbnails, right? And again, and we'll go deeper into that. There's lots of different ways to go through this, right? Hello, Valerie. Your daughter says the drawings on the initial screen are really cool. That is awesome. Future force artist. Definitions like those are so useful. I think it might come in handy right now for me as I'm doing some 3D animations. Yeah, what's the opinion within the animation? What's the goal of the animation? What is its job? What is it supposed to convey, right, to the audience? All right, onward. So we talk about reference. What is good and bad reference, right? Let's just start there before we even get into the artwork itself. Good reference means, to me, it suits the purpose or function that it's supposed to, right? It might be purely for inspiration. Maybe you're not feeling inspired, right? And you're just out there looking through imagery online. It could be other artists' work. It could be models. It could be anything. It could be photographs of flowers. It could be photographs of fighter jets or boxers, whatever it is, where you're like, man, that's really cool. I'm inspired to create something based off of that reference, right? It could just, be information. It could be both, right? Lots of times when you're in a job situation, as Swenley was talking about earlier with character design, you might literally just need a piece of information, right? It's like, I'm drawing swords. I need a sword from a certain time period, from a certain area in the world. It looks like this. Oh, that's cool. It's got this curve in it. It's like a saber. I'm going to maybe play with that curve. Do I want to straighten it out more, make it more curvy? Do I want it to be exact? Right. But now I have this opportunity. It's this window of opportunity to say something about it. Right. So you want to learn to see ideas, right? We're talking about this reference. What we want to try to help you do is see ideas. And it's not just, again, the copy of space. It's not just information to copy. You want to chase or respond and develop the idea, not copy it. The skills are learned due to the desire to illustrate, right, these ideas. So I always think of this, I always call it the carrot, right? When I was in school, there's plenty of things that I had to go through and learn that I really wasn't interested in learning, but my desire was so strong to know how to draw, to basically be able to communicate, because otherwise you're kind of gagged, right? It's like your skills gag you or don't gag you, right? And to a certain degree, right? So the more skill you have, the less you are gagged in order to speak and convey your thoughts visually, right? So I didn't want to be gagged. I was like, all right, I need to learn this anatomy. I need to learn perspective in order for me to talk about things the way that I want to talk about them. I want to see. I had certain teachers and I loved their work, right? And when I watch them draw, I can see what they were seeing, but I didn't have that ability all on my own. When I would sit down, it's like I would lose the magic of seeing the world through their vision, yet I could see them sitting there and looking at their reality, seeing the piece of paper. And, it took time. It took time to kind of learn the headspace, right? Learn the headspace of how they perceive the world, right? And that's, again, what we're trying to teach you here today is, different ways of perceiving, okay? Very exciting stuff. I very clearly remember that in school. I remember even seeing, when I was a sophomore, seeing seniors draw and going, man, I see it when they're doing it. And then when I sit down, it disappears. I'm not interesting enough. It's kind of the way I would pitch it to myself. I'm like, I'm not interesting enough yet to see that level of interest, of that level of uniqueness in the things that I'm looking at. Everything's kind of boring. And that's my fault, no one else's fault. The world is what it is. It's up to me to be the filter of amazement for it, right? So one way of doing this is write down your ideas, right? Create goals. So at drawingforce.com, when we're teaching students there, we have them write down concepts. And they go all the way from creative to utilitarian, right? And that's a big deal. A lot of the artists, I don't think, are really that excited about doing that exercise. But vast majority of the time, after a couple of weeks of doing it, or months even of doing it, they come back and are like, you know what, this really changed the way I look at the model. You know, you want to start writing about who the model is, right? The model might be taking a pose and you're thinking, he looks like a spy, like shooting a gun in the middle of a battle, or she looks like a flamenco dancer or a ballerina, right? But that's really important. The students may not even be aware of this, but that's the beginning of their creative journey with the model. You know, and that's where most of you want to go with art, is to have creative jobs, right? So you're looking at something and it's giving you an idea, right? We're all human beings, right? So when we take poses, we can relate to them, right? That's our ubiquity, our humanity, is to go, oh, that person looks upset. How do you know that? Well, their head is in their hands and their head is down, right? So you get it. So you have an idea, you have a story, right? And you start going after that. And if you draw for that, instead of like this concern all the time of, is it right? Did I copy it right? Did I get the angle right? That is a whole other level of skill. And I'm not saying you don't need to learn the skills, you do, but you learn them as you go because you're after always something bigger. And I think that's the way to learn. It doesn't matter if it's drawing or painting, sculpting, whatever it is. Have this other thing that you're after. And now you get really hungry to learn the skills, these different skills to get to that place, you know, where everyone else is in school sitting down going, you know, I need to measure the head. I need to get this angle right and get that angle right. It's not those things aren't important, but they're secondary to what do they all serve, right? What's the concept that you are trying to serve, right? So writing down, my first note to you guys here really is write things down. What am I after? It could be creative, metaphorical. It could be functional for the metaphorical. It could be purely utilitarian. Just say, you know what, the leg is doing this. I need to get that idea. This leg feels hard and stiff and strong. Those are ideas. How am I going to get that to show up instead of just leg, leg, right? And just going and copying and bringing over like you're a scanner, right? So you want more than that out of the experience. And the only way it's going to show up, you know, there's no magic to this outside of you have to be that magical filter. It's not going to show up on its own. It's not like your brain's going to be thinking in such a mundane manner and like an amazing drawing is going to show up. It's A to A. What you think is what you get. Okay.
If I might add something to that, Mike,
Yeah,
to
please.
link it back to the entertainment jobs. Like you get client work, you usually get a briefing, which are exactly what you talked about, written ideas. You know, they don't tell you just go draw whatever. You get a briefing and you get ideas that you have to use your skills to draw and illustrate. So again, this translates directly into those type of jobs.
Yeah, you know, years ago, late 90s, I saw George Lucas speak at George Washington University, and he was with Brad Berndt, the audio guy, and Dennis Murin, the visual effects guy. And they said something that really struck me. They were like, you know, when we hire you, we expect the skill. Like, we already know you have skill. What you bring to the table that's unique are your humanities, right? So he was there telling students at the George Washington University, like, your humanity classes matter. Your humanity matters. Like, who are you? What's your history? What was life like? Where did you grow up? What do you like reading? What do you do in your you know, spare time, right? That's the stuff that you start bringing to the table, because that's your creativity showing up. Like, how do you think? How do you work, right? Did you grow up in a big city? Did you grow up on a farm? How does that affect you? What does that have to do with, you know, with the work that you do itself? So that kind of really struck me. I thought that was pretty smart, actually, to say that, because they're not going to hire someone without the skill. There's plenty of skilled people out there in the world. There's plenty of people who can draw. There's plenty of people who can copy. But who are you? What starts to separate you? And do you have the ability to be rich enough and interesting enough as a person to like show up with all these awesome ideas, right? And it takes curiosity, right? You have to be a curious person. You have to be interesting to be interested, right? So you want to be aware of that as you're learning, you know, as you're learning how to work. It's not just, like I said, it's not even just skill. Even if you're the best drafts person in the world, it's more than that too, right? It's more than that. So you want to keep that sharp always on the front end while all this other stuff is going on, right? While you're learning how to draw in this case, right?
Well,
Yeah,
Luana,
awesome.
kick out the fear, because I don't think like fear and curiosity can live in the same mind. You know,
Right.
should be like, you should, because you want to do these experiments, right? You want to play, so you have to just forget the fear. It's just like if you're playing a game or something, and if you just fear of getting into the ground, how will you just like play with it? So it's the same kind of thing, you know. If you are just feared of like doing these experiments, like exaggerating the poses or ideas, well, if you have fear, you cannot do like that well, basically. So yeah, be curious. I would say, like, yeah, you have to be curious. You have to sculpt away all the like fear away first.
Yeah, it makes me think of like a race car driver or some kind of dangerous job. Like you can't be afraid and enjoy it. Like you're either out there and it's just exciting to you. It's usually a rush, right? People who like those kinds of extreme sports, it's a rush, right? That's the enjoyment of it. You're not sitting there pondering, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Like it doesn't, that can't exist while you're driving. That's when you fail, right? Because you're worried about all the things that are going to happen or go wrong. So with the drawing, you want to be bold, you know, and you can fail as much as you want, right? Because again, you're just trying, you know, like God, I wish I had a magic wand. I wish I had one where I could just take all fear from all artists just right out of their bodies. So you can just boldly go forward and be excited. And as Mrityunjay said, be just curious about what's going on in front of you and trying to go after those concepts. Most definitely. Okay, so let's get back to Photoshop. So the more you can see of the truth, the more you can generate opinion and ideas about, right? So again, it's not copying, okay? It's just clarity of vision, that you do see things accurately, but you have ideas about those things, right? I'm like looking out the window right now and I can see different types of bushes and trees and the grass, and they all have a unique character, right? I'm like, oh, well, that one's got like little short spiky leaves. This one feels kind of sad because the leaves are very big and hanging. Where did I come up with the sadness thing? Well, I'm bringing my humanity into that. I think if somebody looked like that, that would convey sadness, and I'm bringing that to the tree, right? So all of a sudden I'm like, how do I draw a sad tree? Not just draw that tree. I've been inspired by that tree. I'm going to look at that tree and draw it because it gave me this idea, right? I've got this idea from it, from my own humanity, and I'm going to try to bring that in. Now, it doesn't even mean I have to title it Sad Tree, but if I do my job well, another person is going to come over and look at the drawing of that tree and go, wow, that tree feels sad. Boom, right? I nailed it. Somehow I conveyed my idea, my feeling of something by drawing it a certain way because I had that idea in the first place. And then I've got to bring my skill to the table. And if I don't have it, it makes me want to learn it, right? Like, damn, I want to learn it because now I've got something I want to say, right? So that's kind of how that loop starts to work, you know, and I can see that in every different tree and plant out here. I come up with different concepts for it. And we're going to give you a list of like certain things that you can use today, okay? I'm just looking here, Don. So when I look for something in a branch or a log with imagination, it reminds me of this concept. Yeah, we all need that wand. I'm first in line for Mike's Magic. Yeah, believe me, I think I'm in line first as well. Style comes from little line mistakes that you like and want to incorporate into future workmanship. Well, style in a general, I think, does, to Roger's point, I would kind of mold that phrase a little more into, you know, over time, the more work you do, you learn what things you like to do and don't like to do, right? And that kind of helps you grow into your individuality also, right? So the more you can see of the truth, the more you can generate opinions. When I think of that statement, the person I think of is Lucian Freud. Lucian Freud is excellent at seeing clearly, like super clear, almost hyper clear. I haven't seen the original of the self-portrait. This is a painting of him. I have seen this original, and this thing is bigger than I am, and I'm over 6 feet tall. This is a huge painting. Okay, this is in New York City at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it is massive. Okay, and it's like hyper realism. It's better than a photograph, you know, and you get to a sense of just the clarity with which Lucian Freud sees. He sees so well that his opinion is in the sight, right? You could feel the thickness and weight of this guy's body. You can feel the bulbousness of his rib cage coming out of his back. You can feel the force coming over the left-hand side and pushing into the right-hand shoulder. right? I could see and feel, let me try to draw some on this. I could see and feel the rhythm of this, going from here and then sweeping this way, right, to the angle with his arm. I could feel the force going down his leg this way, right? And again, it's big. It's bigger than life. So you're like, oh my God, like this is a real giant of a guy. And you could feel the massiveness, right, and the weight of this guy. It's like I said, it's better than life, right? It's almost like 15K, right? Like it's like, damn, it's so damn real, right? And the same with this. I mean, he sees so clearly that we almost get this like sense of caricature out of the reality, right? That it's beyond what somebody who thinks knows how to copy could accomplish, because he's going beyond the copy. There's opinion in every little moment that he conveys, So Lucian Freud is amazing, I got to say. And the last name is spelled just the way Sigmund Freud is spelled, right? Or when are you going to say something?
The weight on that fat guy, and not just the physicality of it, but he's able to depict that weight, like we're sitting and his like butts are like having that weight effect on it. You can see that gravity basically clearly, which is invisible. So he's able to depict that on such like a big scale of it. That was magical. Something.
Yeah. You can also see that in the history of this guy's feet, right? Like you could tell his feet have taken on the job of carrying this guy around day in and day out. There's almost a thickness or swollenness or musculature to the feet that the feet go through. The same with the legs and calves. Like people that are a little more overweight usually have thicker calves, right, to sustain that weight. So their leg takes on a certain proportion to the rest of the body. You can kind of see that in here, right? Like, yeah, I mean, his level of acuity is so high. Like I said, it's almost beyond what like a normal copyist would even see. It's more awareness, right? Just really awesome.
I wish I
So,
had
yeah, so awesome. So in illustration, entertainment art, and in fine art, the vast majority of this art is based on ideas, right? It's idea based, not copy based. And this is what I'm trying to sell you guys on today, is to be aware of this. So if you're someone who's sitting there learning how to draw and you just keep freaking out about like, oh my God, I just can't copy right. Don't worry about copying right. Try to go deeper and say, I have an idea about this pose. Let me see if I can draw it. What skills do I need to obtain in order to get these ideas down? Now, if you come to drawingforce.com and us guys sitting here, we're going to be teaching you how to see force and understand force and form and shape design and anatomy and so on, right? With energy and aliveness, right? Like that's our big job, right? On this planet right now, is to help educate art students to admire, to see, and understand how to illustrate this thing called force, right? This movement in the body, right? So I just grabbed a bunch of different artists here just to show you, they're drawn well, right? This is Jenny Saville, who's an extremely famous fine artist. And yet here on the other side, we have Bill Sienkiewicz, right? Which is a very famous comic book artist. You can tell they've both been trained from life, right? They're either looking at life drawing right at that moment, which I think Jenny is doing here, all the way to, you can tell they've been trained in that space because there's a level of like this realism, there's something in there. And you can push that really far, you can go all the way to total abstraction. But there's truth in there, but it's not the truth, meaning, and I don't mean truth, I should say it's not copied, right? Because to me, truth is beyond the copying. Like we talked about with Freud, I think real truth comes in the strength of the artist being even clearer and more opinionated than just the copy itself. To me, that's sort of a dead machine type of thing. So, look at these next to each other, kind of an interesting juxtaposition, right, between the two. We have Batman illustration, right, versus a figure image. And look at how she played around here. I mean, she's like, there's reality in here, and then her pushing things. I mean, the one breast is up here, the other one is huge and down to the side. Like she's almost like juxtaposing size and scale and function, right? The looseness of the line compared to areas that are spot on, right? Or spot on, where she's talking about form. She's playing with the contour, with the line, the hardness and softness of the anatomy, right? A lot of different stuff going on here, right? Versus the Batman talking about the anatomy, there's tone, there's stretching across the stomach, the lifting of the arm, how he blocked out the fist, right? Just lots of different stuff happening. So these are also Bill Sienkiewicz. I grabbed him because he was a very famous comic book artist, especially when I was collecting comics and studying comics, like, or, you know, 80s and 90s. But he's different than most comic book artists. You can tell he was more from like illustration. So there's a little bit more realism in here than just it looking like comic book art, right? It's a little bit more fine artish and almost a little bit more real in some way, right? And I've had books of his too where it's not real at all. It's almost cartoony, right? So he has really wide range because of his skill level, right? So we have Wolverine on the left here and Elektra. And I would guarantee, I would say most of this is probably just drawn from imagination or lightly referenced, right? And then he's pushing things much further than that, obviously, right? Lots of drama, right? So that's something he's interested in, is making his pictures dramatic. Now, not everybody's after that again, but that's what he's doing. So I started digging around some of my artwork from the character design book just to show you concepts. So one of the big things in that book is the idea of the bounding box and proportion. And this is an orange piece of construction paper I literally taped down on a piece of paper, and then I drew a China marker on top of this. And I tried to like figure out how I was going to use that long vertical shape compared to the model. So up here, the model was resting on a pole. So I kind of converted the pole into the box and made the box the use of the hanging of the hands on top of it, right? And then I went all the way down to the feet, and I had the feet kind of splay out from underneath the box, right? And you can see I was playing with the size of it and the scale of it. I'm thinking about like the weight of the body and the different jobs of the legs. One's relaxed, one's got a lot more stress underneath it. And this image, I really like this image actually. It's one of my favorites, I think, that I've ever created. I love the abstraction of it. I like that I literally just put that rectangle, that horizontal rectangle across his chest to almost be like a microscopic version of the clothing, to say, here's what the clothing looks like if you could look close up. It's in this box, it's textured, it's dirty, it's got these red and white stripes. I made it a swatch. I basically said, here's the pirate, I'm gonna throw a swatch right across his body so you know what he's wearing, right? And then kind of went through the rest of it. And it's very shaped out, right? It's very angular. It was more like texture on a body, you know, and playing with that within the different areas, experimenting with the textures, right? Let's see. These are also from the character design book. So talking about opinion and how do you do it? I see a lot of abstraction when I'm drawing to help me form opinions. So here's these long rectangles again for these figures. Notice the one on the left is very vertical and the other one is more horizontal. So one guy is skinnier and taller, the other one's shorter and fatter, right? Then notice the strung diagonal from the shoulder across to the hand. Notice on the left, it's a stronger diagonal. On the right, it's a weaker diagonal, right? So I'm seeing this swatch, this shape, and I'm seeing it go to the hand. So the hand is like the focal points. One of the focal points, right, is that open hand in the circle of it. To me, it's almost like a spotlight or a stage, and it's broken out of the silhouette of the figure, right? So in one illustration, I put the gun in the hand, and the other one, I have his hand opened up, right? And then notice here on the faces, I said, well, now I'm going to block out the stage for the head. And then I also put a little horizontal band across the eyes. It's almost like old Hollywood lighting, right? Like they would put like a light across the face, but it is like a little stage to me. It's like, here's the face, here's the eyes. What are their proportions relative to the big rectangle of the entire body? You'll notice I put this swatch across the floor. It's almost like a surfboard, right? It's the perspective they're standing on. So if you just look at the brown shapes, it's like, what is that? But I was able to use that to push the character design, right? So I'm using abstraction, which came from my opinions. It's like, oh, this guy's tall and skinny. His hand's going to be over here. It's in this stage. I want his eyes to be small and narrow. I want his head to be this big. His shoulders are going to be on this angle. I'm making decisions towards a bigger purpose of like, how do I want to convey the presence of this character, right? So this is another way, right? You could just literally block out abstract shapes, right? We talked about writing. I use abstract shapes a lot when I'm designing, and that's what you're seeing here. This is, I love drawing from movies. So here's me drawing from one of the King Kong films. There's so many, honestly, I don't even remember which one this is from. The top is more of a study on being more accurate to the film. In the bottom one, I said, I'm going to angularize this and try to clarify what I think the function of this is. So what you'll notice here, it's not super obvious, but what I did was I really pushed the clarity of the shape of the light, which I noticed they did in the film. They just did it very subtly up here. And I was like, man, I'm going to really point that to this eyeball. You see, and I kept this one tinted in gray. So I kind of angularized the structure of everything. And then I made this triangle of light point to the eye and just tried to make it clearer. Right. And then all the drawings below, these are me drawing. I'm drawing with ink, by the way. I'm drawing with a pen, and then I'm toning with graphite. And it's me forming opinions on the fly. You know, I'm like, oh, I really like that his jaw is like that. Here he's stretched and very vertical. Here he's also pulling to the right. You know, it's like the narrowness of the eyes, the bigness of the nose, right? It's like caricature in a sense. I'm responding, all these different thoughts, and I'm drawing them on the fly to try and use my skill to make them show up, right? In this one, I went through 2 steps, right? I did a study to kind of understand. And sometimes I don't see something right away. It's the focus of being an artist that lets me see more, because I'm looking with more intention, with more clarity, with more focus than I might normally in my casual day-to-day looking at things. And that leads me to more opinions because I'm seeing more clearly, right? So that's what happens up at the top. All right, we're almost done with my part here. So here we have Robert Valley on the left. And I just blanked on this guy. Help me out, Swenley. This is the Disney animator.
Mark Davis.
Davis, yeah, so Mark Davis, right? Both are drawing with a lot of opinion, right? I mean, look at this Robert Valley illustration, right? If you haven't seen this, by the way, this is inspired off of the Wonder Woman animation that he has done on YouTube. If you check out Wonder Woman, Robert Valley, it's spelled the way it sounds, V-A-L-L-E-Y, Robert Valley. Robert Valley Wonder Woman is a great like 3-part animated series that he did of Wonder Woman with this Camaro. And look at the crazy proportions, right? Really cool shape design, the coolness of the car. And then you have Davis on the side, right? Who's pushing shape. He's pushing the acting that's going on here. I don't know if you did this on purpose, Swenley, but it's kind of interesting that they're both cigarette based, right? It's like all the posing to this little story that's gone up here with her cigarette. And over here you have Cruella, where the whole shape comes out like this, where she points, right? And she's also like looking this way. She kind of looks almost gleeful and intent here at the same time, right? But everything's shooting that way. She's up here and everything's like, boom, look down here, check out my car, right? So the bodies are being used almost as compositional elements with story, right? They're conveying story through the characters, you see? Lots of different shapes and so on going on as well. Okay, so here's a list, right? Here's a list of some different tools, right? First of all, it's this idea of forming an opinion based on information. One huge way is comparison, right? Comparison's a big one, right? It's probably the one I use the most. So when I look at, metaphors or simile or analogies, I forget, one of them is using the word like and one is not. It's like, this is like this, right? The model is like a razor, right? The model is like a bull, right? The model is like blank. That, man, to me, that is immediate spark of fire, right? I'm like, man, I got to get this, right? This is comparison that I see. It reminds me of something else. And you want to get into that 1 + 1 = 3 mindset, right? Boom, new exciting idea. How do I get that, right? And it could be function that you're really excited by. It's the way the model works. This is where a lot of our force conversations come in, right? It's like the model's like a bridge, right? The leg is like a column. Those metaphors help set up my thinking and my response to the model and to that information and how I'm going to try to convey that idea. It could be acting, right? You could be thinking about the acting, like we just looked at Cruella, right? The emotion that it expresses, the posing, what's the story that this character is conveying? Who are they? What are they doing? Where are they? How do I make that show up in my drawing? And that could be even just from a life drawing, right? Shape. It could be shape that is what you're responding to. I see again some of the bushes out there, and it's like, darn thing's a perfect box. This one's tall, skinny, inverted triangle, right? Like there's all different kinds of shapes that I might just be responding to. It could, we don't talk usually about painting here, but it could be value or color, right? It might be like super high contrast. Look at how low that contrast is. It's fall now, you know, I'm in the Northwest now, and, you know, trees are changing. My wife's an artist, and the other day we were like, damn, look at those leaves, right? They're like so bright orange yellow, and they're like popping off of the green. And the sun had just dipped behind a cloud, so it was bright out, but diffused. And man, it was like the trees were on fire, right? Like everything was super rich, super rich in color. That's a cool thing. That's a cool idea. If I were painting that, I would be like, man, I'm going to push that concept, right? It could be anatomy. There's drawings in my books where I'm like, the shoulder blade reminds me of an axe, which it does, right? Because it's the blade, right? Notice it's called shoulder blade. It reminds me of like an axe, right? So what are your interests, right? I'm just giving you some thoughts here. These are some of the things that Mrityunjay Swenley and I use. You know, your comparisons might be totally different because of your humanities, right? And what your background is. You might come up with something I would never think of because of your own past that still works, right? Which is super exciting that we can both look at the same thing and come up with a different way of perceiving it, right? And yet in the end, potentially still convey it in the way that is more clarity of what it actually is, right? Which is amazing to me. So here is here's an image, right? I grabbed one photograph. I'm going to do just something really fast here because I want the other guys to show what they've been working on or what they have for this picture as well. But when I look at this, I end up with all kinds of ideas. I'm like, oh, it's like a rectangle, but it's like leaning this way. And there's kind of this almost like triangulation that's happening here. His head's going this way. I see that force is going this way. These are all like boom, boom, boom thoughts, right? I feel like I really want to like strain this building that he's like from like falling over, right? So that starts me thinking, you know, I'm like, okay, and his head's like way over there, and it's, you know, it's off in the distance, right? I want all that power in his shoulder. That's a concept, right? Maybe I want to bring his knee forward more. I like that it's like hiding all the way back there into the anatomy, but I really want to bring it out. And then maybe I, you know, so you can see I make the leg smaller. I bring this knee forward, and then I'm going to bring this foot maybe further out in front here. It feels huge to me. I'm just like, boom, look at this foot, right? This leg is like super muscular. Maybe I get all those striated like muscles in there, all those quads are in there. I get that knee in there, this calf, everything is very tight over here, right? I like the strength of this arm, and it's got all this like gnarly anatomy sitting on it, right? Notice I'm talking to you as I'm telling you my ideas, right? I'm like this gnarly anatomy. I'm trying to get all this like ripped musculature still going on with, I know that the force of it's going this way, right? His body's also kind of interestingly going away and going away. So I just noticed that. So I'm like, maybe I want to push the width here and make it narrower there, right? So now you see I'm going to push his hip away and then get wide, 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 and then narrow, narrow, narrow. You see what just happened there? Right, so the silhouette changed because of that, right? I got his head, I want his head hanging lower. I just noticed it's like down here, right? So I want that like down there like that. So this is just my first pass. I want you to see that I drew with force, form, and shape, all those things. Those are my skills. But what I'm really doing is I'm drawing ideas, right? I'm using skills to try to draw ideas. And I can stay at this all day. You know, we can come up with 100 different things that we want to go after on this guy. That's where your creativity has to step in. Are you interesting enough? Are you rich enough to look at one pose and come up with lots of different thoughts about it? Even though he's just doing this one thing, I have lots of different things I want to say about it, you see? So that's what we want to try to create, okay? So that was just one concept, right? I'm going to hand it over to the other guys now. Who wants to go? Who went first last week? You guys remember?
Swanli, I think Swanli.
Okay, so it's all yours. Let's hand it over to you, Mrityunjay. I need to give you the He-Man power. Let's see, right there, and there, and there. there. All right, it's all yours.
Okay, so I was preparing something that like I was drawing something, like I was experimenting with the pose here, and this is the pose obviously, and here's what I come up. That's the first pass, right? So look at that. You know what I was looking at. I didn't use the bounding box thing in here, but I was like, oh, let me go for this idea, okay, which is this. He's like rushing. Obviously, he's just like pushing himself up. I want to show some of the shoulder strength in there, you know, for sure. I was going for this idea, the bump in the body there, and looking for this like massive, you know. If you look at his body, he's just it's just more like that, you know. He's like a triangle, the body is massive, and the legs feel small, you know. So legs feel a little bit weak. He's more like he's gonna crumble up you know, in like a couple of seconds. So that's what the idea is for this one. Obviously this
Before you leave this, what I love and that you in the audience can see today is, so you just saw me rough something out. Here's what Mrityunjay's been working on. It's the same model and they both work, but slightly different concepts. I love the idea of the proportion of the bigger upper body with the smaller legs. I didn't go after that in my first pass, right? But notice we both have drawings that function in similar ways, right? There's this whole idea of the tilting into that shoulder, right, that happened there. Yeah, and by you going up to the hump of his back, you almost really started getting the thing I was getting at the end, which is the sort of small to big to small in the rib cage that was going away, you know? It's cool.
So that's the first one. Here's the second, right? So here I use a little bit of like bounding box thing. But here the idea is different. Okay, so I'm going for that massive body in there, but really the idea here is this leg coming out, you know. So the boxiness of the knee in there, and this leg is like really coming out. And I just noticed there's like a proportion, and there's like a similarity, you know. This angle is like this, and the angle of the leg is like this. So it caught my attention. Now we can change that, or we can also, as you can see, the angle is like a little bit like that, you know, and this angle is like this. So we can change that, or we can just keep it same. Okay, just make it more and more parallel. This is again like playing. Here I also did this massive part of the chest. So I was saying, okay, the upper body is like this, but this chest part, as you can see, like this pectoralis over that side, it's coming out of that silhouette, and it's like forming this massive volume in there. It's not that massive, but I'm trying to like do this with it, you know. So the upper body is like this, the whole body, but that pectoralis, you know, is creating that extra shape in there. Also, I'm going for the depth here. So really this size of that foot in there, this size of the foot, look at the size in there. And I'm also going for this triangular balance that he's creating, you know, with his arms and legs in there. So as you can see, I did that, but I just resizing, you know, constantly. So it just got out of the place, but I was like doing it something like this. It's like, oh, look at his body, you know, I can see that long rectangle. So I'm going to just stretch it more. You know, that's how you do it basically. So what you do is you try to incorporate that model's rougher volumes into those blocks, and say, okay, the height is not that much. The width is obviously longer. See, if you want to play with those, you can just do something like that. See, and I'm pushing in the right ideas because that rectangle is longer lengthwise, you know, not in the breadth size. So that's how you can play with it. Okay, so this is the second pass, and look at the details, you know. I'm just like looking for this eyebrows. It's like, oh, look at that, you know, like eyebrows, and that brow ridge, you know, that's like poking out of the face in there. So something like that. Yeah, so these are some little ideas with the second one, and here's the third one.
That's fun.
So, yeah, this was my favorite one out of these. It's like, oh, it reminds me of a ladybug or something like that. So yeah, using metaphor, you can come up with a metaphor while into the process. And again, I'm just going for that hump. It's like I didn't get that hump like enough. I didn't respect it enough in the first iteration. So I'm just going to push it more in that one. So here I just again paying attention to a little bit details. Is like, oh, look at this calf. It's actually contacting the thighs. That's why it's just like squashing up more. So I squash it up, but look at the line weight as I'm coming down. It's very light, which means that that is not in contact with the thighs anymore. So it's not being flat or something like that, you know. So that area is not affected by it. And again, just look at the massive body and the triangular thing that I did, you know, obvious. And it looks like ladybug, you know, all of sure.
Yeah, it's
So
really cool. I love that one.
thanks. So that's what I got. So I can give it to Sunday so he can like demo us, you know, the actual things.
Yeah, let's
All
see what
right.
he's got.
See what's
Thanks, Mutunjay.
yeah, we're welcome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Hold on, I got to get power to Swimley. I'm lacking on my job here. Marcos, you're on. All right, it's all yours.
All right, let's see. So let me the video over here. So yeah, like Mike talked about writing, you know, and ironically, this is something that came up a lot during mentorship these past weeks, because I think it's underestimated, you know. And of course, once you start like with experience, you take these notes mentally, but even today, I still find that it helps to write them down, you know. So my first reaction when I saw the model was to proportion, you know, like I was like, whoa, look at this massive upper torso. So that's the main idea that I want to play with, you know. And in contrast to that, like in order for the upper torso to appear massive, I have to contrast it with something smaller. So I'm going to make the pelvis tiny, you know. And the words are also important. Like my first reaction was like a big upper torso, but I'm like, that's not good enough. I have to go bigger. Then it's a huge upper torso and a massive upper torso. So it gave my mind something like very clear to go after. And then I thought, like, if there is all that weight on those arms, the arms were going to be struggling. So this is my first pass, you know. So notice this is the main idea that I went for: massive upper torso, tinier pelvis. And for the struggling arms, I thought more like in a cartoon or comic book sense, you know, you draw like these motion lines that show that the arms are shaking. Yeah,
He's
exactly.
stressed. Poor guy.
Yeah. And funny enough, I think if I hadn't written this down, most likely it wouldn't have occurred to me during drawing. You know, so man, the power of writing, it's so underestimated, I think. So this was iteration number 1. And now that I had it, I was like, okay, I want to see how far can I push this idea before it breaks. You know, like Mutunjay talked about fear. It's subtle, you know, it's easy to hold back, you know. So even here, I had to remind myself, you can push this much, much further. Like, let's take a risk and see how far this can go. So here I pushed it further, you know, and I made the head smaller, which also helps making the upper torso feel more massive. And then I try to push it even more. You know? And notice all the weight, you know. And here the force concepts come into play, because like the placement of his arms, especially this arm, is super important, you know, because he still needs to be balanced, unless my idea was to like having right in the middle of falling, but that's not what I was after, you know. So the placement of these hands, like you have all this massive weight right here, you need something to support it, you know. If I had angled this arm, go a new layer, you know, if I had drawn that arm like right here, for example, like there would be no support here, you would fall, you know. So I would break the balance of the post. And in the reference, you still balance. I wanted to keep that that idea. So I was thinking about, like, you have this massive weight over here. Okay, I need, if you think about it like architecture, you need this this beam right here, you know, this pillar of support, and here we have another pillar of support. And of course, like for this part of the weight, we have the pillars of the legs causing the support, you know. And I think I can push it even further, you know, and it would start getting more in the territory of caricature, which is fun, again, and these type of things translate directly into working as a concept artist or as an illustrator. You start taking more and more risk instead of just drawing the average, because subconsciously, if you're focused on copying, subconsciously, once you're like faced with an illustration job, you're going to play it safe, because you're not used to take risks. So this is a great exercise, especially for designers.
You said it's starting to get into caricature.
Yeah, it's starting.
Just
We
starting.
can push it much further.
Right now, it looks like a giant granite turtle.
Killing Prinda.
Yeah, it's fine. Like even when drawing this, I had to keep reminding myself, like you don't have to copy. You can take more freedom with the reference. It's only there for consulting. For information.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, we have a couple of minutes left. I think I'm gonna try to take a couple more stabs. So here's my first, right? All talking about the energy. The other guys you saw, everyone went for this like giant back, right? It's kind of like a big force shape. Let's see if we can really play with that. Maybe give him a smallish head all the way back here. I love his brow because it really like sticks out. So I'm going to really shove it out there. His back really shoves in his anatomy there, right? It really shoves into the back and he's got that hump. I'm going to try to bring the reality in while I'm doing the craziness, right? Like we got that hump and I'm going to try to pull in the skin there. I can see how it goes down to his shorts, like right in here. And again, we have his rib cage. So I don't have a full plan of attack yet. On this one, I'm kind of going piecemeal to try and figure it out. I mean, I know what the big idea of the pose is, right? I'm going to get his arm kind of placed in here. I'm going to really push out like the hip. And this leg just impresses the heck out of me with how it's a freaking tree, right? It's just massive and muscular. Wrinkles, wrinkles, wrinkles. I'm going to add more wrinkles basically just to make that point. I think I'm going to take the idea of what it looks like to me is I like the big body. I forget if it was Swanley and Motunje brought up like the smallness too. I think I'm going to push the smallness down here to make it tinier of a waist, right? So let's go like this. That'll help contrast the rib cage, right? I really want this to be sharp. And then this feels like I said, like a tree trunk to me. I'm gonna just have it go from small to big, almost with two straights, right, as it comes out. And this leg is kind of doing a totally different job. It's like squashed up here, hanging out. While the other one is, yeah, it's just super strong. A lot of work going on in this foot down here, right? One thing I know that's pretty tricky, and you don't have to stick to this, but you got to be careful not to lose potentially, let's say, the idea of the pose. If what you want to stay true on is how it works, is the placement of things, right? Even though all three of us have been like pushing things around, you want to make sure the pose works. Like I think Swanley probably push the placement of things the most today out of all of us. But you got to keep the body up, right? Like not have Trindo fall on his face, the model fall on his face, right? So I was able to get the hand almost right to where the foot was as it was before. But it's not like it has to be like that. I can move it around if I want, but I know at least if I do get it there, it's still probably functioning the way that it was intended to, right? I just love that you could see the full cut in between the tricep muscles there. The boniness here. You see it's ulna popping out. So I'm adding details that I see that are real, right? I'm not copying, I'm respecting them. It's like, oh, look at that, that's cool. Here's my thought on that, right? Something like that, right? So there's our last one in closing. So hopefully we've inspired you today to understand that drawing does not have to be copying, that you've got different, ways to, there's different ways to think to try to convey concepts, that they don't have to be purely information only or copy only, right? Like go further than that, see where your mind takes you. And let that be your carrot, right? Let that be what inspires you to want to learn how to draw in the first place, right? Sometimes just learning how to draw is not all fun and games all on its own. I get that. I totally understand that concept. And I sometimes hear that from the students. It's not all the time. What's fun is, I think, what you're going to do with it, right? And sometimes it is fun, So have a great week, everyone. Yeah, and go have fun. Go have fun with the drawings. See what you bring to the table. How are you going to push the concepts? What are the concepts? Write them down. Think about metaphors. Think of 1 + 1 = 3, and so on. Okay. You guys have anything you want to add?
No,
I think that's awesome.
All right. All right, everyone. Then have a great weekend and a great week, and we will all see you next Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Nice. Bye-bye.
See ya.